Hi, welcome to an all-new episode of the DeviantArt podcast. My name is Matt Holtz, and today we've got with us a very special guest coming to us all the way from Australia, KelogsLoops. Welcome.
Good morning. Hi guys. Hi.
How are you doing today?
It's a bit early in the morning. It's like 6 a.m. A little bit nervous, but very excited and glad to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We're really excited to get you on. We're excited to get to talk to you. I know that I've already fanned out over you in our previous chat, but I've been following you forever, and your work is such an inspiration that I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Matt. That's such a pleasure.
So, uh, why don't you introduce yourself for anyone who may not know you or your works? Let's give them a little bit of information about you.
My name's Hugh. I'm an Australian artist. I'm known online as KelogsLoops. Um, uh, I don't know what else to say.
There you
I like
go.
ducks. I don't know.
So, I have to ask because this is something that's always interesting to me. Where did your username come from?
Oh, I mean, I would love to have a cool story behind it, but it was a silly name that I made back in high school. It was one of those when I was really young. You had to like write a username, and Hugh knew when it was taken, and I was like, and I was eating Kellogg's Fruit Loops at the time, and that was the first thing that came to mind. So, and it stuck. Yeah, so that was an online
Well,
username.
there you go. There you go. I think I've gone through about 20 usernames online, so I'm proud of you for sticking to one. That's a good branding choice.
I mean, I'm kind of like, oh, is it too late? Like, it's kind of a silly name, but maybe it's a bit too late.
Oh no, I don't think it's ever too late, but I think that you've done a great job of like embracing that and like really making a brand off it. So you're doing
Thank you.
great. So uh, you just had an art show right at the end of the
I
year.
did. Yeah.
So how did that go? Let's hear a little bit about that because like that's really exciting to do.
So it was. I had an exhibition scheduled, a solo show, scheduled for September back in last year, and it was. I mean, everything was going ahead well, and then obviously, coronavirus happened, so things got pushed back, and because of the lockdown in Melbourne, the show was not allowed to happen. So that was a bit upsetting, a bit sad because I was pretty keen and excited to share the works. But luckily, lockdown ended in November, so we were able to have a 1 day opening uh, just a month ago, which was really fun. It was really nice to, I mean, first of all, see other people. We were in lockdown for like 3 months, so it was nice to get out there, celebrate, and share the work. So yeah, it actually turned out to be really good.
Nice. How was
Yeah.
it having an exhibition during COVID times? Like that's got to be a little bit different than your typical show.
Well, in terms of workflow, not so much because I mean, when I'm working on an exhibition, I tend to be a hermit anyway. I'm in my own self-imposed lockdown, so that aspect doesn't really change. But it was hard in that, I mean, not seeing friends for that long and just being like not knowing what's going on. It was a unprecedented time. So
Mhm.
that made it hard, and there were a lot of uh realizations and issues that went beyond the exhibition that kind of made it harder than normal. But it was hard. But it all ended up really doing really well, and it was a very fun show and a nice way to end the year actually. Yeah.
Mhm. So what's it like for those who haven't had a show? What's it like preparing for a show? Getting like selecting the works and knowing what goes into it.
So the process. Well, at least for what happened with me was I was invited to do a solo show. I think a year and a half, no, 2 years ago. So they ask you a lot way in advance. And so I always have like an idea sitting in the back of my mind. And I'd always wanted to do this theme, The Dream. And I was always scared about doing it because it was a bit too much, a bit too, I don't know, big of a theme. But I was excited because the idea sat in my mind for a while. And then when it came to, I started working on it this year. I made sketches. Actually, I've got some here. I did some like
Yeah, let's
little
see them.
drawings and sketches. So it starts with like brainstorming, and then
Mhm.
I start with fleshing out the pieces. I try to like really prepare and think about it as one big whole, I don't know, unit, I guess, before I start on it. And
Yeah.
then when it's all ready, I start. painting. I don't know.
So what pulled you to the dream then is kind of the theme of the collection.
Well, so I think like there's just an interest in like the fact that we all have. I mean, I think the idea that we all have similar dreams, even though we're so different. I think that's interesting. Like the idea of the falling dream. I don't know if you've had that. Like you're falling and then you
Yeah,
jerk and you wake yourself up. So I think it's pretty cool that you and I have that, even though we're worlds apart and we have completely different lives. I think it's really cool. So that is an interesting thing for me.
yeah, that is really interesting. I guess I've never even thought about that we all share those similar experiences in a very surreal space, right?
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. So that was why I wanted to do the dream. And then obviously it's a very fun theme because it's so subjective and it's open to interpretation. And then there's just so much you can imagine, I guess.
So, how do you take something like a dream and a dream state in that almost fantastical, ethereal world and bring that into something traditional, which is a little bit more locked down and physical?
Wait, sorry, what was the question again?
Like,
Oh, sorry, I have this
how do you take the
coming to.
concept of like a dream world or a dream state and apply that into your art?
Well, I don't think of it so much as applying. It's more of so so the way it comes like the way I would brainstorm the pieces is so I would spend like a 3 days or a week like listening to very dreamy music and kind of put myself into kind of a mentality of like almost like a trance. Not a trance, I wouldn't say a trance, but like a I don't know how to explain it. Like a kind of a mindset. And then I would try and just draw out those ideas as loosely and fluid as possible from what I'm feeling or thinking. So try to translate those ideas in the mood I put myself in directly, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes
That
sense.
makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that surrounding yourself with things that help inspire and set the tone allows you
Yeah.
that to flow through you a little bit more. You become one with that sort of mentality.
Yeah. So
So that's excellent. Like
love
I'm
that.
stocted to get hear a little bit about your show and that collection because I was definitely following it online. I thought it was really cool.
Oh,
And
thanks so much.
yeah, of course. And I see a lot of new people joining. Those numbers just keep skyrocketing everywhere. So thank you for bringing your fans in.
Try not to look at the number. So
Yeah,
scary.
don't look at it. No pressure. But for those of you just joining, please know that we're also partnering with Wacom this week to bring you a Wacom One tablet uh, that you can enter to win just by capturing a piece of Hugh's work. So click the link in the bio, and you're going to be able to find that and caption his piece so that you can potentially win a Wacom One tablet. So make sure to do that because it's not too difficult, and it's a great way to get some new gear to level up. So, speaking about digital art, let's go back to your very beginning origin story and how you got started with art.
Okay.
Because I love that when we
Um,
were talking, you mentioned that you still associate yourself as being a digital artist, like
I
which
do.
I think is so interesting because I've always associated you so much with traditional. So let's talk about how that all got started. Let's go back to the beginning.
Okay, let's see. So I started drawing. The earliest childhood memory of me drawing was when I was like, I think 5 or like 4, somewhere around there. So I started drawing because my brother's girlfriend at the time, who's now my sister-in-law, she taught me how to draw Sailor Moon, using one of those those anime how to draw anime in 5 steps
Yeah,
thingies.
I think we
So
all
she
did
taught,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So that's how I learned. That's how I started, and then from there, I mean, the rest was history. I thought it was the coolest thing ever that you could turn a circle and a cross and a triangle into like Sailor Moon. So from there, I just kept drawing all the time. And then I was always that kid in class who would just draw and draw in my sketchbooks, my notebooks, and my classmates' notebooks. So I was that kid. But then, so I was always a traditional art. So I was always a pencil artist up until about high school.
Mhm.
And then that's when I first got my for my one of my I think my 14th birthday. I got a digital tablet, a Wacom tablet from my brother, and And from there, I just started painting digitally all the time. I was obsessed because at the time I was following all these. That was around the time I joined DeviantArt, and I
Mhm.
followed Loish, Yume, uh, Art Germ, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever seeing that kind of stuff. So I was obsessed with digital art, and my work started to gain recognition. My digital art. Uh, so my work started to gain recognition first through my digital work, and then I just kept doing it. So it was always my first thing, my baby. You know what I mean? So I could
Yeah.
never. I still think of myself as a digital artist, which is weird. Yeah, it is weird. Even though I haven't like painted digitally in a very long time.
I love those
Yeah.
people that you mentioned too, Lois and Yume and Artem. Like, we actually just got Yume did a Kickstarter recently, and her book just arrived at the office today. So I was really excited to like grab that.
Wait, she did a Kickstarter?
I believe so, yeah, or at least had a book
Oh, I
that
didn't
just
know
got
that.
delivered. Yeah,
Oh, damn.
I'd
What's
run
that?
over and get it, but then you'd have a blank moss wall just on frame with you, and no one wants to see that. But those are such amazing people, and in the chat, I'd love to hear other people that have inspired the people in the chat. I know that a lot of you are inspired by you, so I'm sure that we'll see your name in there a lot. But that's amazing. So from that first tablet that you had, what sort of change did that bring to your art in the like way that you design stuff? Because I know that every new medium kind of brings a new, almost like muscle memory and a new flow to how you create.
Wait, sorry. What did you
So
mean?
like as you transition from doing like pencil and anime to using a
Yeah.
tablet, how did you see that impacting your work?
Well, it was actually really hard to. So the reason I say I think of myself as a digital artist is because I love the Control Z tool. I think it's the best tool. Being able to undo something, I think is the best invention ever created. So transitioning from going undo into traditional art was probably the hardest thing and most terrifying thing. So I started doing watercolor. People most know my work for my watercolor work nowadays, but I'd only started doing watercolor back in 2013, I think. And at the time, it was only because I had to do I was kind of forced to do watercolor for a class. Shout out to my art teacher. Thank you so much. Um, I was I was kind of forced, and I hated it at the start. I really hated it so much doing transitioning because I was so used to Control Z.
Mm-hmm.
It was really hard, but then I think being forced to try something different and also a new perspective made me look at my work in a whole different light. Like instead of thinking about how much I could obsess over like, fine details that you might not even see unless you zoomed in like 1,000%, I was trying to look more at overall composition and like being very what's the word? Being very uh
We got you.
like
It's so early where you're at.
planned. Yeah, okay. Being very like planned. What's the word?
Yeah, like having foresight, being strategic, going.
Strategic, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
But being more smart about how I painted because when you make the mark with traditional like painting, you can't undo it so easily. So everything was there was more planning and more thinking about how I was going to do it rather than just going, oh, I'll just do this, Control Z, nothing like that, Control Z. So that was the hardest part. Sorry, long topic.
No, I appreciate that. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like all of us have, I think, become really accustomed to the Control Z in that like
Yeah.
mindset of like, I'm just gonna do this
Intentional,
until.
that's the word.
You
Someone
see
said
the
it, it's
thesaurus
intentional.
happening in chat right now. Uh, you won't believe the amount of time the chat has saved me on this podcast. I'm always like, don't get
Uh,
distracted by the chat, and then secretly I'm like, chat, tell me what to say.
I should have asked.
uh, but yeah, I think that like there's a perfectionism that is almost implied from digital art, right? Or expected because
Exactly.
you can
Mm,
continue to do it and continue to change it without any real repercussions.
yeah.
So
And I mean,
with
it's a good thing, but I thought it was, yeah.
no, go ahead.
Like I thought like it. where I was going in terms of my work, like being perfectionist about it, it made me want to be better and like always improve. But it's just that I think it started to get to an unhealthy point where it was like the tiniest dot was out of place or line was just a bit off, and I'd be like, no, 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 and it's been an hour fixing it. And so I think like it is good to be like in that regard that I strive to like make my work so perfect, but it just made me unnecessarily anxious about my work. And that's why flipping to traditional art was a lot of was a breath of fresh air. Made me just think differently. And I think it's good to have both. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah. Let's talk about that like sense of freedom that you felt in traditional, and like how you kind of got that into your mindset, because that's a large jump. Like
Mm.
that's a free fall of going from the safety net of Control Z into you're gonna put paint on paper.
Yep. Well, so I explained this I've explained it before, and so the reason why I loved digital art was that you have endless possibilities. There's so many things. Like you can choose any color you want. You can create the most beautiful palettes. There's so many options, but it's all in control. Like anything can be done and undone. And with watercolor, it's the complete opposite because it at the time, sorry, it was everything I was scared of and hated. The fact that you can't be in control of how the paint moves, how the colors mix, how everything reacts, and there's so many variables. Absolute chaos, basically absolute chaos. And that was it's the complete opposite. But I think so. I was always scared of that. But then when I first started doing watercolor and just like splashing paint on the page, I think I started to like there was something that was beautiful in a way, like all magnetic about the way it just you kind of relinquish control and it's just you kind of just let the watercolor do its thing. And I think that was what was so addictive about it because you could paint the same thing like as many times as you want, but the paint would never act the same way. It was always different. And I think that's the charm about watercolor is that you can
That's awesome, though.
that's my
That's so
point.
special, right? It's like alive. There are
Yeah,
all these variables that you can't control. You're not
yeah,
just looking at the perfect screen. Like everything kind
yeah.
of has its own feel and its own character by the end of it.
Yeah, and that's why I found myself so gravitate like attracted to watercolor. It was just so like left field. It was just so different, and then I just kept going with it, and people liked it. So yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. So, uh, what sort of way do you find that, like, you mentioned kind of like how the paper can be different every single time and act differently, no matter if it's the same brand, same paint, whatever. But what other ways have you found like character kind of uh, and that chaos within your art?
Sorry, what
Like,
do you mean?
what ways has the traditional media kind of expressed itself through your art?
Um, uh, uh, sorry, I'm a bit confused by that question. Hold on.
No, no worries. So
What?
just like you were saying earlier, that like when you paint, sometimes the paper will take the paint a certain way or create a certain
Yeah,
texture that was unanticipated. So,
yeah.
what are some other ways that you've seen that kind of take on life with the works that you create? Like some unintentional things that have occurred.
Um, I mean, with watercolor art.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, uh, it, so the thing is, watercolor for me, it's never. I mean, this is hard to think about actually. Uh, it's not that I set out to do watercolor to. So this is why I say I think of myself, even to this day, primarily as a digital artist. I still think of watercolor as like my side thing, like I'm just practicing with watercolor. But for me, it's like I've learned along the way. I've just kept doing it, and I've learned so many things along the way, and different techniques and way to push myself. But I think it's always been. I think unintentionally, I've tried to catch up with my digital work with watercolor.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
That makes
So
total
like
sense. Yeah.
I think of my digital art as like my best work. And I think of my watercolor as like so it's at least unintentionally I've been trying only because I'm thinking about it now. I think I've always been trying to get my watercolor to look like my digital work,
Mhm.
but mm, but not like that at all. The tricky one. Because it's so different. Like you, yeah. I
Yeah,
try
two
to.
completely different things. Uh,
Yeah.
but like, so when you were trying to kind of replicate or create digital effects in a way in your traditional, what sort of ways were you exploring that? Were you like trying to find that through mixing different paints or using different brushes, or what sort of ways were you experimenting to try and bring that digital feel to your traditional work?
Well, probably one of the most obvious examples is the way. So I don't know. If you look at my old digital work, my style is very much this. It's very similar. It's very the same in that it's girls with hair, flowy things, and just a lot of like action. That's never changed. But it's so example is I would always paint these kind of almost not realistically but well rendered uh skin tones and like bodies and there'd be like a lot of abstract and graphic elements to that piece. And so with my watercolor work, I started to try and do achieve that. So I've been in the past few years I've been focusing a lot on trying to get better at rendering skin with watercolor. And so if you look at the way I paint skin digitally and with watercolor, they're quite similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to play catch up with my watercolor work to get to the digital level.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so much easier on digital to say like I'm going to apply all these effects, I'm going to drop this
yeah,
texture. It's
yeah,
all a matter of clicks, whereas in traditional, I'm sure that there's so much that goes into trying to replicate that feel and that like life.
yeah.
that
It really
that's
is. Yeah.
amazing. So with that, like we did have a ton of questions of people asking about your skin tone and how you create it. Uh, a user named STRQ Tom actually asked, "How do you mix colors for skin, and how many layers do you end up typically using?"
Uh, well, first of all, a lot of layers. Probably a lot of unnecessary. Like I follow watercolor artists, and these guys out there, they be like, they're painting with just a single layer, and I think they're crazy, like gods. But I like to layer very thin layers over time. So it's probably like I don't know, I can't put a number to it, but in like an extreme case, they'd be like 30 layers. In an extreme case, yeah. But in terms of mixing skin tones, I mean, it's a bit hard to just explain in it briefly, but the idea is that you to simplify it, you make an orange and then you neutralize it. So if you mix a cool red
Uh-huh.
and like an earthy yellow, like a raw sienna, and then that makes like a really warm orange. That's like a base skin tone, and then you neutralize it. So you add blue, like a warm blue, and it'll bring it down, cool it down, and that's what realistic skin color is roughly around. And from there, it's just a matter of balancing more reds or more yellows or more cool tones. I
Pro
think that's how it
tips.
works. That's just what I do.
But I think that like just even looking at the chat, so many people are just asking all these questions about like all the things that you create and how you've created them. Like I think that you've really built up this reputation as like someone that's very much an expert in the field because of this work and this dedication that you've put into it. Like you're doing
Oh,
good
hey,
things.
I'm flattered.
I feel like you'll never admit it, but you're doing amazing things.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Uh, and people in the chat, reminder that we are doing a full Q&A at the end of this in about 15 minutes. So make sure to put your questions there. We've got producers that will be writing down your questions, and we'll bring them all up at the end for everything that we got time with. Okay, so what sort of tea are you drinking? That's the real question.
English brekkie.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good
I'm an
choice.
English brekkie guy. Yeah.
I went for an Americano this morning, which I say that video of. I think I'm the only
Oh
person
yeah.
that's used this espresso machine since March of last year. I come in
Damn.
and I
So it's
have to
your
like
machine now.
clean it out. Yeah, well, no one else is in the office, so
Oh yeah.
that's why you hear this echo. It's literally me, this moss wall to absorb a little bit of sound, and no one.
That's fun though.
It is. I feel very special, and I'm very high up. We've got some huge windows.
That's good.
So let's talk a little bit about your motto, because this is something that
Got
I
you.
absolutely love and feel is so special and so true and authentic to what you do. So you've got this motto, which is "Be right back, chasing dreams." So let's talk about how that started.
Oh, okay. So I don't know, there is an exact story. Hold on, wait, let me remember. So, so the motto itself, it's a reminder. It's something that I've tried to live by every day for the past 6 years, I think. Shit. It's a motto. It marked the start of when I committed to this dream of mine. The model itself is just it's a reminder for me to always challenge myself, to always try to learn, and always try to constantly improve and just be better and just to make art. That's just the core of what it is. That I'll always remember to chase those dreams and do everything that it takes to get there. But the story of how it started, it's a September 26th, 2014. No, 15, 14. So one of those years.
Okay.
But it started because it was the day I hit 1,000 watches on DeviantArt. Yes, and then I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, and this was during the time where I was still studying physiotherapy, and I was still in a bit of a state of limbo between what I wanted to do and whether I wanted to pursue art or not. It's a bit of a weird time, but I remember telling her because I just come home from uni or something, and I was like, oh, dude, I gotta draw today, like I gotta go do my dream stuff, like I'll talk to you later, like I'm gonna go bring back chasing my dreams, and that's how it started.
I love that it comes from something so like just honest. Like there was no like I'm gonna make this my slogan. I'm gonna like latch myself to this. It was just something that you said, and you really turned it into a philosophy,
Yeah,
which is beautiful.
it
Like
honestly
that's,
was a silly saying.
but that's so great. So what I love is you say that you're always working towards chasing those dreams, right, and always working towards
Hmm.
learning. So what are some ways that you continue to like make sure that you're not stagnating, that you make sure that you're continuing to learn? What are some ways that you do that?
Well, I find myself always trying to challenge myself, and one example is like a very obvious example is when I do my exhibition shows. I will always try and be better than my last show because I don't want to just do the same thing. I want to like do harder things, try things that are impossible. Like for example, the last show, the dream show, I'd never painted clouds before, and I've always wanted to, and I was like, this is probably the right time to give it a go. So I'm always trying to think of what I can do that I hadn't done before. Before that show, I'd never painted animals, and then before that show, I had never drawn guys and or feet. That's a weird one, but I'd never drawn that. It's small things, but the overall thing is that it's to do things that I've never done before and tried. And I have a YouTube channel as well where I try to um do challenge videos where for example I painted on a denim jacket. I never thought I would do that, but it was fun. So it doesn't have to be big crazy challenges, but small things. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's still a step towards what beer pack chasing dreams means.
Yeah, every new challenge is another tool in your kit that you can apply to something else.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that you did that. So also you mentioned that you were having kind of a time in your life where you were trying to decide whether you were going to do art or not. So what
Yeah.
pushed you in that direction to really say like art is what I'm going to do? Like what sort of mindset did you find yourself in to make that choice?
I mean, well, like I mentioned earlier, I was always that art kid in school, like the one just drawing all the time, and that kind of said enough. But um, it didn't mean enough to me at the time because when in high school I was studying. I went to a very academic high school. I was very smart, and basically everyone wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or engineer. And if you did art, you kind of like everyone's kind of it was just stigma, and it kind of sucked. So I grew up believing that art wasn't a career. It wasn't a thing. Like it was just something that it was something that you were only given a position if you were privileged or if you were just blessed as a, prodigy or something. So it was never questioned that I could do art. But then out of high school, so I studied I studied physiotherapy for 2 years, and during that time, that was when I was drawing all the time after uni, and that's when like the Back Chasing Dreams thing started. That's when my work started to be noticed, and it wasn't like I set out to do anything. It's just I just wanted to draw and share it. And then because my work started to be recognized, I started to think like there was kind of seed in my head like, what if like what if you could do art? It was crazy. I mean, looking back, it was so silly. Like, of course, like there are so many careers in art, but I just didn't know. And that seed eventually started to like grow bigger and bigger, and then it was more of a. It became more of a question of not what if it was possible. It was more of the fear of it, I guess. The fear
Hmm.
of like doing something that I don't know that up till now, all your life you thought was a fable, just something that doesn't exist. And then it got to a point where every day I would wake up being like, if I die today and I hadn't try giving my shot at spending every day trying to live that dream, then would I regret something? Would I regret it? And that mentality or that thought kind of stuck in my head for a whole entire year. And it was like I said, it was a strange time because I was tossing and turning like, oh, I have a very so I'm in a good place,
Yeah.
or do I try and go for it? It was a weird time, but one day I remember waking up and being like, nah, like you just have to give it a go, and you don't know, and luckily it worked out.
I think that so many people can relate to
Sorry, long
that
story.
though. Like it's such a great story, and I think it's so important for people to hear it because I think a lot of people have heard similar things their entire life. Of
Yeah,
oh, you do art. What's your real job? What's your day job? What's
yeah,
whatever? And
real job.
there
That's
is
the
that
one.
stigma of like art
Yeah,
or creative fields in general. Like I'm in LA, so actors, what's your real job?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
where or musicians, that creative fields aren't real, but there's such
yeah,
an actual industry and life and opportunities out there. It's just that like real dedication, and I think that people like yourself who have this true calling to where you feel that you have to create, you want to create, it's part of you. I think that's so
yeah,
important for them to hear stories from people like you that you did pursue this and you did chase that dream because it gives them that power and that resource and that like belief that they can follow in your footsteps.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and it is hard. Like, I mean, I'm not sure for everyone else's environment, but it also might be just an Asian thing. But in an Asian household, it's like you do art. No, 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 no. Yeah. But I was always surrounded by. I went to a very smart school, so I was surrounded by people who made me feel like, no, I should be, you know, doing something to. I don't know. It was it was more of I think it was a lot of pressure put on for myself, but also being in an environment where it was just the complete opposite of what you wanted to do.
mhm.
A combination of everything, I guess.
Yeah, that could be real challenging. Like the environment that you find yourself growing up in can be really,
Yeah,
really impactful to the
yeah,
ways that you see opportunity or the ways that you even feel about yourself or what you can do. So,
yeah,
like, again, I think it's really important that people hear these stories, like especially from people as inspirational as you, so that they can know that those opportunities are out
yeah. I mean, I'm very glad like it worked out. It was scary at first because I mean it's hard when also like you're it's hard when your career counselor says no, don't do it. But it was harder when like your parents were kind of like, well, my mom was on the fence about it too, so that was the hardest part.
there.
But she's on board now. She loves it, so yeah.
Well,
So
yeah,
I'm glad that.
it's that thing where parents really want you to succeed, right? And they
Yeah,
have their own environment that they grew up in telling them how to succeed. So it's a
yeah,
continued thing, like passed down through all sorts of different families,
yeah.
regionally or socioeconomically. It's always there. So it's really great that she's on board now. Like I love hearing that. Like it's so great that she's there for you and able to celebrate with
She
you.
loves it.
Yeah, I mean, I would find it hard not to love the work that you do. Like you do such great things, and you create such like inspirational pieces and pieces that like I look at and it just blows my mind. Like the way they use negative space and like light. Oh god, don't even get me started on this because like I'll spend the rest of the podcast doing this. We won't hit the Q&A. It'll be disastrous.
Thank you
But
very much. It means a
yeah,
lot.
so thank you honestly for being so open about that because again, I think telling these stories are huge. I think that that's so helpful, and the chat is agreeing. They're all cheering and sending a ton of hearts. I mean, I don't think I've seen the.
Siren's here. Hi,
Oh yeah,
Laura.
hello. It's always fun seeing
Um,
artists in the chat. Like I love that.
my friend's
Okay, so
hi, Q.
yeah, say hi to anyone that you see. Yeah, we can look at the chat for a second. I will remind the chat that we're doing a Q&A in just a few minutes, and also to click the link in our bio so that you can go to the caption contest, so you can caption some of Q's work, so that you can potentially win a Wacom One tablet, so that you can start leveling up your art. So thank you, Wacom, for giving us some stuff to work with. All right, are you ready to roll into the Q&A?
I'm nervous, but let's do it.
Don't worry. The Q&A is so much fun, and we've gotten a bevy of pages. I feel really bad for our producer working on writing down all the questions because there's so many. All right, so let's start off real easy. Favorite paper to work with from Sanitarium Prim?
Asha's watercolor.
Yeah, that's your go-to? They gotta start
No,
sending
it's
you
actually the
stuff
best
for
paper.
free if you're showing it on camera, man.
No, it's actually the best paper. I mean, from what I believe, yeah.
What makes a paper good for you? Not just theirs, but any paper. What sort of things do you look for?
For watercolor, it needs to be 100% cotton, and I like a bit of texture, so a medium tooth. And if it has good water absorption and retention,
all the things.
yeah.
Okay, so something that you've talked a little bit on earlier, but let's delve into a little bit more detail. How do you plan the composition in your pieces? And that's from creativity.psd.
So this is a weird one. So when I do my sketches, I just do like squiggles. I have my sketchbook somewhere. I just do squiggles, and then so I have the idea, and then when I have the idea, I'll spend like a lot of time working on composition and mapping out like balance and movement throughout. So in terms of if there's no like set way. I just work it until it looks right. So I go through a lot of drafts of fixing like, do I shift to thirds? Do I try halves? Do I do quarters? Do I move this way? It's a lot of it's hard to break down in a single answer.
Yeah, I mean, each piece has its own composition.
Yeah.
So when you create a piece, then you typically go from your sketchbook to like a thumbnail to final. Like how do you build up your pieces? Because you showed us some of your like dreams thumbnails earlier.
So it'd be like I have this little squiggle pencil with like squiggle like really bad drawings, like scribbles, and then but to me it says enough because it really captures like what I'm trying to write, like, do or say, and then from there I will flesh it out to like a more developed sketch, and then be like, oh, that composition needs to be a work or it's right, and then from there I'll do another round, another round, another round, and then when it's starting to feel okay, then I start working on color and I do like the watercolor thumbnails like this.
Nice.
I don't know if you can see. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it really well.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, how long does it take to finish one of your paintings from start to finish? And that's from Hello Pretty Please.
It really depends. Like if it's a sketch, I can do it in a day. If it's like a big painting, I mean, the longest I've spent on a painting. Oh, that's a hard one. I don't know. I would say, in average, a week to a month, and a lot of it is like planning, sketching, thumbnails, and a lot of it is also drying time. Watercolor takes so damn long.
Yeah, it's got to really be completely done. Otherwise, you're starting to blend. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Key. My best friend's in the chat.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
My best friend.
Hi, Key. Hi, best friend.
So, What inspires the fabric pattern in your drawings? From Selena Gonzalez.
So I started painting fabric. I remember this because someone asked me about this as well. I think it was subconscious, but I remember I went on a trip to Vietnam with my family, and this was at the time where I was still exploring what I would like to do with watercolor. And I remember like, so my mom's a tailor, and for some reason we were always visiting tailoring shops when I was there. Oh no, my brother's getting married, that's why. Yeah. So we were at the tailors, and for some reason I just kept like looking at the fabrics, and oh, this is like kind of cool. And then I remember I had an exhibition that was coming up, and the theme about it was that I wanted to explore heritage and cultural roots and be more about like representing who I am and my identity. And so I wanted to explore like Vietnamese or East Asian I don't know, fabric in a weird way, because I think at least in like in those countries, design is so prevalent in fabric, if it makes sense. So like for example, the Vietnamese gown, it's called áo dai. Well, I don't better say that. I'm gonna get roasted for saying it wrong. Áo dai. No, ignore what I said. But it's there's like these intricate patterns, and I think it's very unique to Vietnamese culture. And so that's when I started to explore fabric, and by extension, I just became obsessed with it.
Awesome. That's cool that it's got such a root to it, and it's not just like
Yeah.
some thing that you randomly went off on. That you were able to kind of
Well,
find this passion for it.
but it was subconscious in that it wasn't like I set out to do it. It's just when someone asked me, I realized, oh wait, no, it was because at the time I was trying to explore for that show, like cultural roots and identity. And then I remember thinking of fabric was like, I was just looking at fabric. It was weird just for the longest time. Being, oh well, like look at this pattern, it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Uh, so Sukadore says you don't seem to use much green in your work. Do you dislike the color? What other colors do you avoid, and why?
Okay, to be fair, I used to always paint with green digitally, only digitally. Because I mean, so I find green a very hard color to work with watercolor because one, it gets muddy, and two, it's a lot of conflicts when you're painting skin. There's a lot of it's hard to balance red and green together. And generally, skin is quite red. That's why I avoid green because it's a hot mess. But with digital art, I used to always paint green because it like you could create this insane color contrast, color combinations and palettes, but you could undo it. So yeah.
Uh,
So, I have
so
nothing against green. I wish I could paint green. It's just hard.
it's a challenge. We use green all the time, so it's
Yeah.
one of those things I've just gotten used to at this point.
Oh yeah, the logo's green. Yeah.
Uh, so uh, Cat Studio 7 wants to know, how do you keep teaching yourself new background techniques?
So Cat City is a friend of mine. She's a friend from DeviantArt, Renee. um, uh, how do I keep? I mean, like I mentioned earlier, my watercolor is catch up with my digital work. So by the time I was already like doing backgrounds on DeviantArt or the digital art, uh, that was years ago, and so my watercolor is just trying to catch up to that. So I want to get better at backgrounds with watercolor. So I just try and always push and keep going.
I just keep learning, keep driving.
Yeah,
I actually saw Cat hey, there they are. They just appeared in chat.
yeah, she's here. All right.
Uh, Ralph PFVR wants to know, do you have any tips on how to work light into a piece?
Work with light into, as in lighting.
I believe so. I just
I
have
guess so.
text.
Um, with is there a tip to work with lighting? That's
So maybe when you're
that's a
creating a
that's a
piece, how do
hard
you
one.
strategize like how the lighting will be?
Oh, okay. Again, this is me with watercolor trying to like catch up with digital work. So with my digital work, I used to always love playing with lighting. I used to like doing lighting from under, from behind, from the side. because I think lighting is makes such a dramatic effect and impact on overall mood and feeling of a piece. So with digital art, I was always experimenting with light sources. With watercolor, it was at least starting out for the first few years, it was a lot of fun on lighting. But now I've been experimenting with like what lighting I would do back when I was doing digital effects, like behind me, under. You can see this in my recent work. It was like the first time I tried experimenting with different lighting. But yes, catch up.
I love how much that always applies. Like it's so interesting
Yeah.
seeing how that digital impacts your traditional so much. Like I think that's really unique.
It's not conscious. Like it's only because now that you're asking, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That's why I do that. I've always wanted my watercolor work to get to that level.
Uh, so uh, the Manzu wants to know: do you use reference when you're drawing human poses?
Yes and no. So so that's why a lot of my poses look a bit very dramatic to put it nicely. Um, I, I didn't grow up learning how to use references, so it's not inbuilt nature for me to use references. I just naturally tend to just make it up on the go. But if I'm doing a piece where it's something that I'm not familiar with drawing or painting in terms of anatomy especially, then I will use references. Like I can't, example is drawing feet. Feet are hard. Okay? You can't. I don't think anyone can draw feet just from their head without looking at a foot. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that feet are the hands of the lower half of the body, right? Like
Yes, yes, so true. So
they're
I have
impossibly
to get
difficult.
references.
People just draw shoes over top, and they're like, "We're done."
Yes, yes. Or you crop off after the
Yeah,
waist.
that's why whenever people do commissions, it always starts away from the feet and then builds its way down. Uh, so uh, Yaskal Singh says a lot of your art and characters seem to be in moods of contemplation. Is this a feeling you aim to invoke?
Yes. Um. So I, how do I explain this? I don't like to paint. Um. I don't like to paint. I mean, I don't know the words. I don't like it. I just unintentionally, but I don't like to paint direct emotions. Like, I don't like to paint someone crying or someone laughing or uh, I like the feeling to be interpreted, suggested rather than this is how it is. If you see someone crying, then you know that the emotion is sad. So I like to put them in middle states. Like, is she sad? Is she not?
Mm-hmm. Kind of
It's
allow a
a
little bit more interpretation.
yeah. Because I like in terms of like storytelling, I like it when I don't like when I'm told how to feel. But like when I'm suggested or given the tools to think and decide how I feel. That's the way I
Mm.
like to think about it.
That's really cool. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. It leaves more room to associate and connect with it too, right? Because
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, you're not being forced to feel one specific way that the subject is.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
in that kind of storytelling aspect, you tend if that's what you're presented with, you connect more it's your interpretation, so you connect more with how you interpret and how you feel. But if you're told to feel sad, you might not necessarily feel sad, it's just because you were told to feel sad.
Mhm.
That's why I like to think about storytelling at least.
Yeah, and kind of in that middle state too, you're able to project yourself into that, right? Or whatever mood you
Yeah,
might currently be in and
yeah,
get your own feeling from it.
yeah.
Uh, so just a couple more as we're getting close to the end of the hour. Uh, I told you this would
Okay.
go fast, didn't I? It's crazy. These things always just
Whoa, okay.
this thing's blaze
That's
by.
fast.
And look at how
Yeah.
well we've done. Zero stress. Like you're a master now. All
I was
right.
sitting here for an hour, so stressed, but yeah.
Doesn't show. You're doing amazing.
Uh,
All right. So a DT Art Ocean says, how did you learn to be patient with watercolors and get over the fear of ruining the art? That makes me procrastinate.
that's a good one. That's a really good one. Okay. It's not that I learned to be patient. I was forced to be patient. With watercolor, you can't rush it. You just can't. So and coming that's the switch from digital art was so hard because I'm so used to just I don't like that, I'm gonna change it. But in with watercolor, it's no, I have to wait for this layer to dry before I can change it. And I think that was actually a very good skill, not only to watercolor but to life, knowing that it's gonna work out. I'm just gotta give it time and let it develop itself. Uh, and that was a good lesson. But it wasn't that I set out to do it. I hated waiting. It was I was forced to learn to be patient. And by extension, now I feel like I'm a lot more forgiving when things aren't looking good. Things aren't right there they're meant to be. But I know that if I give it time and keep working on it, it'll get to where it needs to be. Was that the
Yeah.
question? Maybe I
No,
might
that
have
makes tons of
jumped.
sense. We talked about it a little bit earlier this week where we were talking about like embracing the mistake, right? Or like learning to love that sort of
Yes, yes.
organic
Bob
feeling.
Ross, honest mistakes, no, happy accidents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, let's see. One last one. There's so many. Oh my gosh.
Everyone loves
uh,
your mustache.
yeah, so here's a very technical one, which I love because you do traditional. It's very different than a lot of the questions we typically get. So, mixing colors, do you pre-mix a large amount, or do you mix as you go and continue to add pigment?
I was like, ooh, both, both. So when if I'm working on exhibition painting, I'll try and pre-mix. So I do a lot of color tests, like a lot of them, and I'll try and like pre-mix like a color thingy, so, like a color swatch, like
Yeah,
a little palette. And so I work off that. I listen to reference that if I needed to go over it, then I can go back to that color. Um, but a lot of the time, so if I'm doing just normal sketches or paintings, but not for galleries, then I'll just mix on the go. But I
that's
mix everything because I'm pretty uptight about color.
everyone's gonna go back, screenshot that color palette you held up, and import it into their all their projects.
I mean, yeah, I'll post them anyway. Like I post them on my stories.
All right. So, uh, then one last question I think is important. What kept you going with art through any hard times that you may have had, or any artist block, or any lulls?
Hmm, what kept me going? Is it in terms of life or in terms of art?
I think both. However you want to interpret it. Like, where do you find
Well,
that drive?
um, I mean, at this point, art's always going to be my thing. It's always going to be the thing that I go to, and it's just it's everything for me. It's how I get through things. But my mentality, at least beyond art, but also for art, for like life in general, is that things will pass and you'll get to where you need to be. So if I'm in art block, I know it sucks and it feels shitty and it's just like, uh, but I know that it'll go away. You just got to give it time, and it's for a reason. I'm just burnt out or whatever, but give it some time and I will be backfighting as strong as ever.
Yeah,
And
there's that faith in the art, right, and that faith in your
yeah,
ability.
yeah,
That's
patience.
awesome.
Yeah, this too shall pass. That is it.
There you go. Yeah. Well, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us this week. It means a lot to have you on. It
Thank you
was
for having me.
excellent getting to talk to you, get to hear your story, get to share that with everyone. Thank you to everyone in the chat. If you're just coming in super late, I'm sorry you missed the live, but we'll have this up later on our IGTV so you can watch it again. We'll have the audio up on wherever you listen to audio podcasts. Please make sure to like, subscribe, everything that you can so that we can continue to bring you amazing interviews with artists like you. And where can people find you, follow you, continue to enjoy your work across the internet?
I'm on Instagram, KelogsLoops on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I'm sorry, I will make a YouTube video, guys. I'm really sorry. Please don't roast me. uh, Twitter. I'm on Twitter, DeviantArt, Facebook, and Tumblr.
Just about everywhere.
So, KelogsLoops, the silly name. You can't get it wrong.
Makes it easy. Well, thank you again so much. And everyone at home, don't forget to enter the caption contest so that you can potentially win a Wacom One tablet. The link is in our bio. But thank you so much again for joining us. Again, my name is Matt Buholtz, ggMattB. Thank you for joining us and have a great day. Goodbye.
Thanks, guys. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
loved the chat today. Everyone was so excited and so like just here for it. Like you have such a supportive audience.
It was hard because I was looking at the comments and wanted to like talk to people, but I wanted to answer questions. I was like, oh,
Yeah, there's a lot of
it's
stuff.
hard.
Let's see.
Yeah.
I moved from my tripod so that we can look. Yeah, see, we just got Yume's book and
Oh, okay. I need to get onto that. She's one of my biggest inspirations.
yeah,
Day one.
yeah.
Everyone loves your moustache, man.
Yeah, I told you it's very.
There's so many comments about it.
I saw one guy talking about my forehead. I was very proud I could inspire him with it.